Hey, Mickey. Oh, is this week's
Hey,
news quiz?
Bob.
You're going to show me somebody?
I've been doing some photographic investigation, Bob.
What, is that me morphing into Michael McFaul? That's horrifying.
Obviously, this guy is your brother. I mean, look at the nose. The nose is exactly the same when I morph your face morphs into McFaul. Your chin is the same. Your cheeks are the same. This is the most convincing thing since Chelsea Clinton and Webb Hubble.
I'm having an anxiety attack.
You're obviously related. And your temperaments are similar too.
You mean we keep doing stupid things we have to apologize for?
I mean, you're both hot-headed.
Yeah. But he actually does more things that he, actually does apologize for. Maybe I should have. In fact, there's a Michael McFaul apology of the week that we can get to eventually. But
anyway.
Oh God. Okay, enough. Put it away. We should, for our listeners, for people who are just listening, Mickey demonstrating a level of software prowess that I never would have predicted. Came up with some kind of GIF thing that morphs back and forth between my face and Michael McFaul's, the former U.S. ambassador to Russia, who probably has done as much as anybody to cause the war in Ukraine. I don't mean that in a bad way.
Not as much as Victoria Nuland.
Well, they worked together. They were in the same administration at the same time. In fact, I think he stepped down as ambassador just as that was the moment it happened or something. Like, I think I better go. But
anyway, there was an eerie similarity between your features and Michael McFaul.
I don't see it. I've always thought he looked a little like Jeff Daniels, something that no one's ever said I did. He's certainly more ruggedly handsome than I am. He's probably younger too. That's part of it.
Next, we'll morph you into a Webb Hubble and see what happens.
Okay.
You should have seen the one of Michael McFaul and Ann Applebaum.
Is this what you've been doing all week? Doing Michael McFaul?
What I was doing for an hour yesterday.
That was impressive. Whatever they're paying you for this, it's not enough, Mickey. So people should sign up at patreon.com/Parrot Room so you'll be better paid. Right?
There you go. There was this David Frum tweet. Ukraine is obviously topic A, right?
Yeah, for at least another millennium or so. Yes.
There was the situation seems to be there's a clear divide with sort of Putin bogged down, and there's these negotiations, and he's told the Turks what his demands were, and his demands are basically the same as they've always been.
Well, not as they were pre-war, because now I think he wants actual independence for the Donbass two republics.
But it's independence of the Donbass. He wants Crimea. He wants some sort of neutral status and demilitarization and denazification, whatever that is. Bizarrely, the story I read on his Turkish demands did not mention that they couldn't join the EU. So that was odd. It'd be interesting if he's dropped that. Anyway, there's a divide emerging between people who say, take the deal, end the war, and the people who are the people formerly known as neocons, including David Frum, who tweeted this. It doesn't work that Russia gets to invade an unoffending neighbor, kill thousands of people, smash cities, and then its dictator realizes that he cannot win, proposed to retreat to its starting line and pocket a no EU for Ukraine concession as a consolation prize. But basically, the theory is we shouldn't let him get away with, getting the same deal or a better deal that he could have had if he cut a deal before the war. And I'm happy to take that deal. We have Walter Russell Mead in the Wall Street Journal saying, this is our opportunity. We have him on the run. The way to score victory, the key to war is to pursue a retreating army and destroy it.
Especially if it has nuclear weapons. That's always been my philosophy.
That was Clausewitz's addendum.
He had a footnote about nuclear weapons.
Well, the rhetoric in the Mead piece is quite something. Did you read it?
I didn't read it. I could have kind of guessed, I guess. I mean, he's in many ways a neocon.
Mr. Biden has something else, a once-in-a-decade opportunity to score a historic victory that reshapes the global playing field to America's advantage. To capitalize on Mr. Putin's blunder is the most important job Team Biden has.
Well, how does he want this to end? He wants us to intervene militarily and chase the troops out of Ukraine? I mean, you can't do that without destroying Ukraine.
His proposals do not match the rhetoric. He says we should arm them, we should strengthen sanctions, and make opposition to Mr. Putin the core of our global foreign policy.
What about China? I thought doesn't he want us to make
everything's put on hold while we chase Putin? Basically. Anyway, am I right in that this is the coming divide, the current divide?
Well, there will be disagreement over whether to accept whatever deal's on offer once it becomes on offer. And I think, roughly speaking, this is it. You acknowledge that Crimea is theirs and give away part of the Donbass either to them or as independent states, guarantee some kind of neutrality, no NATO membership. I think that's the kind of thing I'm hearing. There will be disagreement. I mean, one thing I would point out is that pretty much all the people who oppose that deal because it's positive reinforcement for invasion, among other things, are people who also opposed making any significant kind of pre-war concession that might have prevented there from being an invasion that gets positively reinforced.
Is it positive reinforcement for an invasion?
He will pitch it that way at home for sure. He'll try to convince Russians of that. I think I think he will manage to sell it domestically as a win. Yes, probably. I mean, the Russian casualties are not yet huge. This is not Vietnam.
If you believe some, it's 15,000.
Well, Vietnam was 58,000. Okay. But I don't think. I think that's a very high end estimate. I think the lower end estimates are still around 4 or 5. And Russia has historically absorbed much bigger losses than we've ever absorbed. I mean, World War II was to them, something we can't contemplate. So I don't know, and I don't know how he sees his position on the battlefield right now either. But
supposedly time is not on his side. You keep hearing that, right? They're running out of food.
It depends on who you listen to. It depends on who you listen to. If you listen to, what's his name, Douglas McGregor, on Tucker Carlson's show, who is a smart military analyst, is this guy in the Trump administration, a colonel. And you listen to the whole kind of Russians with attitude crowd. It's like, look slowly. And look, the fact is, on the ground, Russia is gaining ground steadily. It's a lot harder than I think they thought it was going to be, but they're gaining ground. The Ukrainians aren't. Maybe some of the new arms will be game changers. The high altitude anti-aircraft systems, which I think aren't installed yet. And then these American drones, the Switchblade drones, great name. Are they going to make a difference? I don't know, but in any day now, for example, if Mariupol falls, I think that liberates a lot of Russian troops to head toward the west, to head and help close the deal of probably enveloping all the eastern Ukraine troops, plus go help with Kyiv. I don't know.
I haven't noticed a lot of stories about any Russian advances in the last couple of days. And there was a story about Ukrainian counterattacks that weren't intended to gain territory. They were just intended to kill a lot of Russians.
Right. In one case, they destroyed 8 helicopters, I think, and that was the most effective. But as far as the material goes, and you're hearing, and Ukraine has been very good about getting these pictures of destroyed Russian tanks out there. But I think because they've been doing that, we have a pretty good idea of how much the Russian arsenal has been depleted. And the official tracker guy, this guy everybody follows, says that Russia's lost like 250 tanks that have been verified visually. I think that's most of the ones they've lost. And by the way, 100 of those have changed hands. They are now functional tanks, apparently, in the hands of the Ukrainians. That matters. Still, 250 tanks is 2% of the number of tanks in the Russian army. And we've seen video within the last couple of days of railroad train heading from Siberia full of tanks. I mean, they can keep replacing that stuff for a long, long time. I mean, I just don't know. I'd like to believe that that the Russians are on their heels. And I do think, look, they seem to me, the fact that there's as serious discussion as there is now of a deal with no actual move on Kyiv, and not even the kind of bombardment that you do in preparation for one. I mean, there is some bombardment. That suggests to me what I've thought all along, that he'd be crazy to try to take Kyiv, and maybe he's come to terms with it. He does not seem eager to do that. The only other thing I'd say is that, according to, is it Michael Kaufman, one of the guys who is now famous for being a Russian military expert, the Russians did, I don't know, a week, 10 days ago or something, they did start to intentionally slow down and consolidate because they'd gotten overextended. So the fact that they haven't been gaining a ton of ground, I would not, necessarily see as too much of a cause for cheer. But I don't know. I have no idea.
With the Chinese, they seem to be flipping the last few days. They were previously sort of pledged fealty to Russia, and everybody was worried of it. I guess they still are, that they would start aiding Russia. But then they sort of denounced the shooting in a food line in Mariupol, I guess it was, and they seem to be softening their tone. And now they've talked to Biden, and I don't have any indication of what happened. But what do you think? I mean, is it conceivable that they would restrain Russia?
They're softening their tone in the English language state-controlled media. I don't know whether they're changing what they're telling the Chinese people. I think, yeah, look, this is not what they were expecting. I'm sure all reports are that she is not happy with how badly the invasion has gone. There's two theories about China. One is, they love this, Europe and the US distracted over here, and with Russia sanctioned, they can get a great deal on commodities and everything, and they'll have a very dependent and nuclear armed client state and so on. And the other argument is, they don't like being associated with a regime as reviled as Russia is now. And beyond a certain point, they don't like instability.
What about they don't like to back the losing side?
Well, there's that too. But I mean, the other thing I'd say is, I think they've gotten a certain amount of what's good about this for them out of it already. In other words, I think under most scenarios about how this ends, assuming it doesn't end apocalyptically, which it could, the U.S. and Europe, the U.S. is going to be much more Europe focused than it would have been a year ago, right? There will be a diversion of attention and military resources toward Europe. China likes that. That's pretty much guaranteed now. So they may have they may have gotten some of the benefit out of it. I suspect if you had, again, like a Brzezinski, a Kissinger type thinker, they might be thinking creatively about how fundamentally changing relations with China over this, and just, kind of leaving Russia out of the deal and deploying China to end this on terms that are relatively favorable.
You would think that's the deal she would push, I'll flip against Russia if you drop all this crap about the Uyghurs and Tibet and Hong Kong. And that's the price of us, flipping.
Yeah.
And
well,
I don't think that's a price that Biden will meet.
Here's what the headlines say. Not that these necessarily reflect what's happening in private, but a week ago, is Jake Sullivan saying, if the Chinese don't respect sanctions, we will punish them. Here is like yesterday headline, Blinken, U.S. will punish China if it provides military aid to Russia. Now, here's from today's New York Times. Biden tells Xi there will be consequences to helping Russia. And, you know, people who know more about these things than I mean, my first reaction to all this was, call me old-fashioned, but, you know, I thought like diplomacy consisted of not making it look like your opponent or your adversary or whoever is doing what you want because you intimidated them. They don't want it to look like that. So you don't create that atmosphere, right? But then I thought, look, what do I know about diplomacy? But I have heard other people who know more about this say, like, this is really not the way this is done. I mean, especially, you know, it's like, and can I just say, this is such a neocon approach: all sticks, no carrots.
What do you do when you're asked at a press conference, you're Tony Blinken, what are you going to do, Mr. Secretary, if China arms Russia?
Well, it depends. Well, first of all, it's like they don't even have to ask. Sullivan, Blinken, they just say this kind of shit. And the other thing is, there are lots of ways to say this. There are lots of ways to convey this. And you have to ask yourself, am I here preening for domestic political purposes, or am I saying things that might pave the way for actual diplomacy? You know, sometimes there is a tension between the two. And I just think this administration's instinct is it's all about politics. I think a lot of this has been driven, period, by politics.
And a lot of it is they're still scared of seeming weak.
Totally.
I guess that's
it's like we have to have a new thing we're doing to Russia every day.
It's post-Kabul syndrome. If Kabul hadn't happened, they wouldn't feel this incredible need.
Yeah.
If they were ahead in the polls, they wouldn't feel this incredible need. But they're back in exactly the same situation before this alleged bounce that they were supposed to get from the State of the Union and the Ukraine business.
Well, maybe this should tell them that a lot of Americans, you know, aren't paying so much attention to Ukraine that it matters how they modulate their public utterances, you know? So maybe they have more room than they thought.
I don't think that's what it means, though.
Well, no, I think it may. I think it may. I mean, I don't know. Although I guess working against that is the view, and you tell me about this, that that what this shows is that in the wake of Ukraine, a Trumpist foreign policy vision is dead within the Republican Party. I mean, there was some vote in the House where, like, on Ukraine, I don't know the substance, but anyway, the kind of not pro-Ukraine vote was like 7 people in the whole House, like Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, like 4 others. That's it.
It shows that if the aggression is sufficiently naked and illegal,
right,
and unsympathetic, that the old Republican hawkish sentiments will rise to the fore. It doesn't mean that they're ready for another Iraq war and getting involved in Syria and the whole project. And you know, John Podhoretz, by the way, wrote a triumphalist, neoconservative has been vindicated article and commentary, which I have not read because it was paywalled. But
both it and the critique of it were paywalled. It was extremely frustrating. Matt Taibbi's critique was paywalled. You can't win in this world. Anyway,
but the second thing is, of course, that voters care more about domestic policy than foreign policy, and I think that's what it's also showing. I think Biden's done pretty well. I'm actually quite grateful that he's been as sane as he has. He's rejected the no-fly zone. He hasn't led with his lip nearly as much as I expected Joe Biden to do. And
well, he did say Putin is a war criminal, and things you may or may not want to. You may or may not want to tell Putin.
But he was giving a bone to the anti-Putin crowd that let him get away with not doing the no-fly zone. He was giving them rhetoric instead of arms, basically. Rhetoric instead of military.
I think he's got a lot of support. He has a heartening amount of elite support on no-fly zone.
Yeah. So what about Blinken said there were no meaningful negotiations going on? I didn't know what he meant by that. Did he mean no meaningful negotiations between us and Russia and China, or that there are no meaningful negotiations going on when the Ukrainians meet with Russia? Because how could that not be meaningful?
I don't know. I don't know what status is. I mean, you know, as you said, a certain amount of it's been just kind of third party, like Turkey saying, well, Russia said they do this. I mean, apparently now Putin did say he would meet with Zelenskyy. If I were Zelenskyy, I would have him go through a metal detector before, before he shows up. But
I think the reason he's at the end of that long table is because he wants, you can't get him with an easy shot. If one of his generals decides to pull their sidearm on him, they're going to have to aim pretty carefully. It's not like he's right next to them.
Speaking of which, did you see this?
I'm somewhat paranoid in that regard.
Did you see this Putin speech thing this morning?
No.
Well, it was a big Trump-like thing. It was like it was in a packed stadium in Russia, tens of thousands outside,
I saw the photo.
Yeah, and then what was funny was then suddenly in the middle of the speech, it's like the feed goes and they start replaying the festivities before that. And for like 10 minutes, people were going like, is this a coup? And I'm thinking like, I don't think you do a coup in front of 140,000 people. No.
That's just what the least expected.
But anyway, I guess it was some technical screw up. But to me, it's interesting that he felt he had to do this because I don't think Putin, one thing I got from this bio of him I'm reading is he does not like regular politicking. If he had his druthers, he'd never have to appear in public. And I think it's interesting that he feels a need to rally the troops domestically like this.
In the what do the neocons want? I mean, I guess they want Putin. They certainly want Walter Russell Mead used the word humiliated.
He wants him humiliated?
I think he used the word humiliated.
That's the other thing I recommend with people who have nuclear weapons.
This all does reek of a little Versailles. He's talking about Xi. We want to show he is capable of major miscalculations in world politics, and second, that he is unable to prevent the U.S. and its allies from humiliating Beijing's most important ally. But are they going for the double bank shot of getting rid of both Putin and Xi? And that's their ultimate wet dream, right?
Get rid of them? Get rid of Xi?
There's all this story about how Xi's, in trouble. I find it. They even said he's in trouble if he backs the loser. I don't think that. I don't think that seems wildly implausible.
I don't think he's in very much trouble.
Chinese economic growth fell from 18% to 4%, Bob. That's a huge drop that has to be trouble for whoever's in charge.
Yeah.
And that's a result of his socialization, anti-capitalist moves. And that has to be the real source of his weakness. But that's a real weakness.
Yeah, but I think he's rigged the system. I mean, both of them have rigged the system in their favor, just kind of structurally. And now this is a year where she needs to at least go through the motions of getting reaffirmed. I think it's some kind of.
And some of the old retired mockers in China are speaking out against it. It's
against the invasion.
Against Xi and against Xi being made, third term premier for life or whatever he's going for.
Yeah, well, I'm not an expert on Chinese politics. I mean, that would be interesting. But I mean, I do think our policy has been de facto one that tends to drive Russia and China together. And there's a lot of evidence of that. And I'm not in favor of that part, but
that was a good piece by Kurt Schlichter, who's not a guy I normally follow slavishly. He's sort of an overwriter not an overwriter. He's a Kevin Williamson sort of, hey, look at me, look how great I'm writing, in line with the Matt Taibbi, Glenn Greenwald the school of writing. But he said, look, we should beat Putin, but we have to I think he endorsed the on-ramp, off-ramp possibility.
Good.
But all the neocons are saying, forget off-ramps. Off-ramps are dead. Even somebody who talked with Ezra Klein said off-ramps are dead. there's no point in pursuing off ramps anymore.
Who was that?
Emma Ashford.
Well, I'd like to know what she meant by that. I think she's a realist.
She seemed very sensible. I think what she meant is that the Ukrainians aren't in the mood to give him an off ramp at the moment. I think that's what she meant.
Well, that could be. I mean,
so she didn't mean what Walter Russell Mead meant. So Schlichter said another reason for not being Versailles-like and going soft on Putin is we really want to ally with Putin against China, at least preserve the possibility that 5 years from now, when all this is forgotten, Russia and the U.S. can form a sort of at least a triangulate. We can make Russia triangulate against China. At least they could be a counterweight to China. We don't want to. That's the obvious strategic move, and it seems he was right about that. I thought. I mean,
I just don't buy the idea that the one thing we have to have is a big enemy, right? It's like, should we go with China against Russia, Russia against China? It's like, I mean, I can see a scenario now where you move closer to China to put pressure on Russia in the short term, but just the idea that we really need to have a Cold War of some kind, man, it's just in our blood. I just don't buy it.
We have these two 1.5 great powers who are saying the era of American dominance is over and we're going to get rid of American dominance. So that's at least adversarial. It's not a Cold War, but it's, they're at least our frenemy.
The era of American dominance will inevitably end. I mean, nothing lasts forever, and we need to accommodate that. We need to do a graceful transition. It doesn't mean that we're subordinated to anybody. I mean, this is why we should have been cultivating respect for rules of the road and laws and things, and prepare the world. If you're not going to be king of the jungle forever, make it so it's not a jungle. We had the opportunity to do that after the Cold War. We didn't. Of course, China is feeling roughly what we were feeling, more than a century ago. We're rising power. We're going to throw our weight around. We did a lot more of it than they're doing. I mean, we did the fucking Philippines.
But if China were a different kind of regime, if, say, the Tiananmen Square demonstrations had been successful, welcoming China as a huge, power equivalent to the United States would be a very different thing than recognizing the current regime of China as a one pole in a multipolar world, right?
Why? Because they are somehow more threatening to us now, or for other considerations. I just don't agree.
They would be willing to trade and be capitalists and a democracy, and we'd all get along and have meetings, and there'd be territorial disputes and military disputes, but it wouldn't be the same.
Well,
they wouldn't be running around saying the democracy and the Western idea is obsolete. We have a new, better system. They wouldn't be saying that, and we wouldn't be worried about it.
They are not. They have never shown the slightest desire to impose their system on us. Okay, this is the biggest. We are the ones. We are the ones who travel around the world saying, if everybody doesn't emulate us exquisitely, you're the enemy. We're the ones who do that. China does not historically do that. The policy that we have pursued, and that Biden and Sullivan and Blinken are emphatically pursuing, only makes it more likely that China will start behaving as if they are adversarial toward democracy. We're the ones insisting that the world be divided between democracies and autocracies. That's not their line. Now, if you sanction the shit out of them and keep lecturing them about how bad their system is, of course they're going to ally with other such systems, and they will strengthen one another. But this was not inherent. I mean,
you're saying they don't want to impose their system on us. Are you saying they don't want the rest of the world to emulate their system as opposed to ours? I think they do.
That's their default position, has been that they don't feel strongly about it. They just want to do business with people and be left alone to mind their own business. Okay, that has been the Chinese philosophy. Now, you can argue that Xi is different and so on. There has been a change in tone, But I think you can very powerfully argue that what change of tone there's been along those lines is largely due to the way we have laid down the law and insisted that it's not acceptable for other countries to not emulate us, basically. And you know, that's my view. I mean, along with the changes you inevitably expect with a rising power. Yeah, they're throwing their weight around more.
I think we're allowed to say you don't want an Orwellian police state.
You mean in China or here?
Yeah, in China.
I'd rather not have one. But you know what I'd really not like is for the whole fucking planet to blow up. And my own view is that we have so many truly existential planetary threats that have to be dealt with that it would be gravely misguided for us to spend all our time delivering lectures to other countries that they're going to pay no attention to. And that if anything will make things worse there.
Doesn't the threat of nuclear annihilation sort of put the global warming threat in the shade?
Well, that's a good example. That's my point. That's my point.
Well, no, but I think you focus on these multiple threats, one of which is global warming. I say global warming is second tier compared to nuclear annihilation.
I think relatively speaking, it's overrated. It's an important problem, but there's a bunch of arms control problems, not just nuclear, that are potentially existential, right. Biological, weapons in space.
Did you see the this was in John Ellis's news items. There's a technique to come up with new molecules to fight disease. You know, a computer program, I guess it's artificial intelligence directed, and they come up with molecules that fight disease, and it's very promising. But if you tweak it a little, it comes up with molecules that are toxic. And they tweaked it a little, and within 6 hours, I think they came up with 4,000 new toxic molecules, some of which are probably more toxic than anything we currently know about.
That's a good example.
So that would be an example. In
I just say, yeah, in this kind of world.
But that seems unstoppable. If that's
well, biological weapons are a huge challenge, but if you have an existential challenge that's huge, you have to try to confront it, and you cannot confront it in the middle of an intense Cold War when you're barely speaking to other major powers. You're just not going to know what's going on there. And that's going to put political pressure on you to develop your own biological weapons. And the same is true in all these areas. So
you're saying take the deal, or are you saying something?
Oh, well, as for the deal, I mean, that's a different, I mean, look, I'm ambivalent about, again, I'm big on international law. I hate reinforcing people for invasion, but I suppose you'll have to accept some version of that. I just, I wish
the Russian people have to realize that Putin didn't get much for this, and there are a lot of dead Russians, even if they're not World War II level. Vietnam level.
I really do. I don't know much about Russian politics, but I think, he has control of state media, which for a big chunk of Russians is basically media. And, he can say, see, I told you these republics are independent. Now I made the Ukrainians respect that. They didn't respect that until I sent the troops in. I told them they couldn't join NATO. They wouldn't agree to that until I sent the troops in. They weren't recognizing Crimea until I sent the troops in. I think he can sell this, but I'm not an expert, but I think he can sell it.
Speaking of a tangential issue with, there's been a lot of hysteria in the United States surrounding this. We have, Joy Reid suggesting Putin be assassinated. We have people saying that Tucker Carlson should be in jail. We have Mitt Romney talking about treasonous remarks by Tulsi Gabbard, however you pronounce her name. And there's also sort of a whitewashing going on. I'm for Zelenskyy. I think he's a hero. Love him. But I just came across this whole thing that I haven't even heard you mention, that before this war,
really crazy, then.
His primary opponent was under house arrest.
During
Medvedchuk. Medvedchuk is his name.
What, during an election or something?
Well, after the election, he won the election, and then at some point he was prevailed. This guy was the leader of the opposition party, and he controlled 3 television stations that were spewing out Putin propaganda. And at one point he said, "I'm closing the television stations and putting this guy under house arrest." And I think he only escaped when the Russians invaded, and now they don't know where he is, but he's not under house arrest anymore.
I knew he closed down the opposition media.
And there's this foreign policy article saying, finally, Zelenskyy acts against this guy. Well, those are the actions of a tin pot third world dictator. They're not actions of a democratic leader. He's throwing his opponent in jail, and at least it shouldn't be celebrated. Maybe he has to do it. Lincoln did a bunch of crap in the Civil War that was along the same lines, but nobody talks about this. Everybody talks about him like he's I don't know, Norm Ornstein or somebody.
Wait, what does that mean?
I should morph his face in Norm Ornstein.
Wait, spell that out. So Norm Ornstein's this political analyst at AEI who comes up with good quotes, and I know.
I think he's gone off the deep end.
Well, his son died, and
but he used to be the voice of centrist reason. He was the king of quotes. He would give you the basic sensible centrist Brookings Institute, and then he turned wildly anti-Trump. Democracy is in peril, and went a little berserk.
Yeah, but he seemed to me, as far as high intensity versions of that went, he seemed to me pretty somehow reasonable.
Well, I'm sure you could have a reasonable conversation with him.
Yeah,
he's the same person.
Wait, so on that though? I mean, look, I agree. See, the reason I haven't been going on and on about how Ukraine isn't a very liberal democracy and it's a very corrupt state, both of which are true, is that to me, that doesn't matter as far as the right-wrong question on the invasion. It's one sovereign nation invaded another one, case closed. Russia is the criminal, but
as you know,
you're right.
I don't quite buy that framework.
I know you don't, but and America isn't. I mean, almost everyone is putting this in terms of, like they ask Ro Khanna, like Max Blumenthal cornered Ro Khanna. Ro Khanna is a pretty progressive, reasonable voice on foreign policy, and he's, he had just voted to, send a bunch of stuff to Ukraine, I guess, and Max was like challenging him, and he was saying, he's saying, why should we do this? And Ro Khanna is like, well, they're democracy, they're this, they're that, and he never said it's a violation of international law to invade a country. It was all, and that's the way it's being played.
He probably realizes that saying something is a violation of international law doesn't have much cachet with the voters. Khanna is speaking to the voters. He's going to talk about what will move the voters, and violating internationally recognized boundaries is not something that voters care about. I'm sorry. Are
you trying to rain on my presidential aspirations, Mickey?
No, but yeah, I'm lauding Ro Khanna. I was going to bring him up. Sanders is trying to push him to run for president.
I think I'll tell you, on foreign policy, he's pretty damn good. And I actually think he's somebody who would not mind, if it occurred to him, to say that something's a violation of international law.
He's terrible on immigration. He's dead to me.
Okay. Well, he'll be sorry to hear that. But anyway, everyone is putting, and that does get to me a little when Zelenskyy positions himself as the guardian of liberal democracy, and he just closed all the opposition media, and they do other stuff now, like the Russian language stuff, trying to push it out of
that was one of Putin's demands, but it was considered an easy one to meet.
I think it is, because some of the most noxious sounding laws aren't really enforced anyway.
Right,
like there's a law that if you're a shopkeeper in an area that only speaks Russian and somebody walks in, you have to greet them in Ukrainian and keep speaking Ukrainian unless they utter the safe word. I'd rather speak Russian. Right. That's the law. I don't think it's enforced.
There was a battle, or an early battle, like weeks ago. There was chronicled in some detail in the Wall Street Journal, and it was in an area that speaks mainly Russian. Yet the people were fighting vigorously to save Ukraine, and they managed to give the Russians a huge defeat. And that was sort of some evidence of the, I think it was Laurent Ruzikas, one of our commenters, chastised you for not realizing that Russian-speaking areas are pro-Ukraine too. And it's possible that in these negotiations, Putin is asking, for these areas that want to stay in Ukraine to be part of the independent Donbass region. And
well, I think the war itself has turned some Ukrainian Russia sympathizers into non-Russia sympathizers, and it was a complicated landscape to begin with. That's true, but yeah.
Anyway, so we have one Ro Khanna supporter. He sort of said even if Biden doesn't run, he's not running. But I guess nobody believes him since he's obviously running. I mean, he's one of these people who's obviously running for president 24 hours a day.
What is his ethnic background? Is he Indian or what?
I don't know. He's some. He's not Latino. He's not black. He's not white. So he's some. I don't know. Aside from that. Anyway.
I'm just wondering if he has like a built-in diaspora constituency or anything.
The Indian diaspora constituency is huge, is very powerful. Not as powerful as some others, but they can raise a shitload of money. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is significant. I agree. So there's some other things to talk about if you're sick of talking about Ukraine.
Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to say about it quickly. I don't think no, the only other thing I'd say is as for Biden's response, I mean, it's easy for all these Republicans to say sanction the shit out of him, which Biden did, but he's the one who's going to be blamed for the inflation. And the Democrats are going to be blamed for the inflation. They're going to suffer for it at the polls. So I just would say good luck, Joe.
Do you think that well, I don't understand. They say, okay, we've sanctioned the hell out of you, but if you use chemical arms, they're going to be sanctions. Okay, we've already thrown everything at him that we can.
It's a real concern. Yeah.
What else do we have to throw at him if he uses chemical weapons? The one critique of the right that I can't get my mind around is taking things off the table. And so we took the idea that our military would be involved in a war in Ukraine off the table. And some people say, even if you don't intend to do it, you should maintain some uncertainty. I sort of think in order to maintain public support, Biden had to say that. But what's your line on that? That's the one critique I respect make that critique.
I think he also had to say it for another domestic political reason, which is just to stop the blob, especially neocon onslaught in its tracks. Like just say it publicly so it's credible, and they just will not hound him so much to send troops. They were even too timid to do it before he'd issue that thing. I mean, you look at what Ann Applebaum and the people were writing. They weren't saying we should intervene militarily. Maybe they would have edged up to it as the conflict pursued, and they would have said, send some planes, why not send some fighters, send some trainers. I mean, but and it's not over.
Nobody could. They all realized they couldn't get away with saying let's send troops after Afghanistan. It's just not going to
happen. Probably.
Even if Putin didn't have nuclear weapons, it wouldn't happen.
Probably, but in terms of pressure to escalate generally, no fly zones and planes, whatever. The game isn't over. Like this theater in Mariupol. I mean, do we know what the deal is in the basement? There could be a whole bunch of dead people there as we speak, right? Or what? Have you heard?
I haven't heard.
Well,
I've heard good news. The bomb didn't penetrate to the basement, but I haven't heard, and hundreds of people left the building safely. I haven't heard that.
They've gotten some out, but anyway, my point is, if you have a situation where Ukraine is kind of on its heels and there's a couple of huge atrocities, that can change the game in terms of what there's political pressure to do.
I don't understand this writing the children on the side of a building. How is that? Do pilots always check and see what's written on the side of a building? I think
it was in the parking lot in stones or something.
It was in two places.
Yeah, but it wasn't just on the walls. You would have been able to see. I mean, look, there's a whole conspiracy theory from the Russian side that this is all an Azov Brigade thing, or a false flag theory or something.
Well, you don't even come close to buying that, do you?
Oh, I don't. I mean, I have no idea. They're I assume it's wrong, but I haven't looked into it.
The Iran talks are back on. That's another topic. Looks like the Russians decided not to sabotage them, or we somehow stymied them by Iran wants it so much that we said we'd go ahead with it anyway, and they've reached some sort of compromise. So you think that's a good thing, right? Well, that's another thing Walter Russell Mead said we should forget about. Forget about the Iran talks for a while we pursue Putin.
Yeah. No, it's win-win for him if we, yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think we started saying to Russia, well, we don't really need you for this deal anyway. Right. Russia wanted to demand that there be some carve out from I think the Ukraine-related sanctions of some of the stuff they were going to do with Iran, or something. I don't know, but I think we started threatening that we could figure out a way to do this without them.
Yes, that's right. But so you should be happy.
Yeah, but I've spent so much of my life on the Iran deal roller coaster that I just barely pay attention anymore. I mean, it's hope it happens. Could have happened earlier.
Bob.
What?
You're going to have to get more excited than that if you're going to live up to your
the funny thing heritage. Is, we do not look like each other. I'm sorry, we don't. Folks on audio only, he's doing the McFaul right morph thing again. I think you take almost any two people and make their faces the same size and do the morph thing, and I don't know.
Well, that's what it's beginning to make me doubt. Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, can you slow down the transition? I want to see what our love child looks like.
You mean stop it in mid transition?
In midstream, yeah.
The key to this morphing technology is the transition period is ephemeral. There actually is no prolonged transition period. It just sort of
but if you slowed it down, there would be one, right? That's the whole point of morphing, isn't it?
If I knew how to slow it down,
we'll work on that. We'll get somebody on that.
It's making me doubt the Chelsea Webb Hubble morph, which was my lodestar. Actually, it will never make me doubt the Ronan Farrow Frank Sinatra morph, which is
that's
dead on.
Case closed.
But the Chelsea,
although as Ronan Farrow said, any number of every child could be Frank Sinatra's or something, but Webb Hubble, I don't know. Couldn't she do better than that? Anyway.
This is a digression. We love digressions. The young Webb Hubble was quite attractive. He was
but don't you see some Bill and Chelsea?
In the court.
I see a lot of Bill and Chelsea.
I worry if you did a morph of Bill and Chelsea, it might be convincing too.
You mean Bill and Hillary or Bill and Chelsea?
Bill and Chelsea. I don't think it'd be as convincing.
You would get Webb Hubble? What do you mean?
No. Well, that would prove that Chelsea was Bill Clinton's daughter.
I think if you did a morph,
shocking as that would be,
I think if you did a morph of Bill and Hillary, you would get Chelsea. That's what I'm saying. She has a lot of Bill in her.
But wouldn't it be why not eliminate the middleman and go right for Bill and Chelsea?
This is Parrot Room fare. The general public deserves better.
They do. They're not. Yes. They're getting what they paid for.
If that.
Okay. Well.
So did you hear about that drone that strayed from Ukrainian airspace and flew into Croatia and blew up?
Did it kill anybody?
This is how World War III starts. It damaged 40 cars, but didn't hurt anybody. But the thing is, it flew over 2 NATO member countries. I mean, it went a long way and then blew up, landed and blew up.
I mean, but the NATO member countries aren't going to start World War III just because a drone flies over their airspace.
No, but suppose it landed there and blown up a bunch of kids, and they looked at it and it's a Russian drone. They don't know if it's a Russian or Ukrainian drone.
Right, but I think even if they knew it was a Russian drone, they wouldn't let it start World War III.
Probably not.
They're not idiots. It's the Turkish drones that apparently are proven game changers because they changed the war in Armenia.
Yeah, but
and the Turkey is shipping some of them to the Ukrainians. I don't understand why there's so few of them. I thought the whole point of drones is you could mass manufacture them, and they say we're sending 13 drones. Well, is that important? I mean, they blow themselves up. Then you have 12 drones. I mean,
has Turkey sent more since the war started?
Supposedly, I think they were going to send more. Yes.
Huh? Because I thought they were kind of worried. They're trying to stay on kind of good terms with Russia. I mean, like, why aren't they sending a whole lot more? They're NATO members.
Somehow a few drones go a long way. I don't quite understand it.
They could use more. There's no such thing as too many drones, I've always said. But the American switchblades are coming.
But like I'd say that I would rather have a Turkish drone than an American switchblade.
Well, there's two kinds of switchblades, it turns out. There's two kinds of switchblades. There's a little one and then there's a big one, it turns out. So
okay.
The big ones loiter. They loiter, which is legal apparently in Ukraine. Loiter.
What do you mean? They hang around until they see you and then they blow
It's a term
up?
for a kind of drone. Yes, one that can hang around a while. They call them loitering drones.
And the little ones don't loiter?
Apparently not. Not for long. Not for long enough to be considered loiterers.
You would think it would be the other way around. Much harder to have a big drone in the sky than a little drone. Shows you what I know.
Well, but if they carry, I think the little ones are suicide drones. I'm not sure if both are. That's an interesting question. Yeah. Maybe that's the only difference. Is the loitering time, and they're both suicide.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
So there are other things to talk about. There's will COVID come back? There's Hunter Biden. There's Judge Jackson. There's Title 42 at the border. I know you're very excited about that, Bob.
Well, will COVID come back? Let me ask you that.
Well, the answer seems to be yes, but maybe not come back in sufficient strength that it causes anybody to reverse the rush toward normalization that we're under now. Yeah. Fauci has said he might have to bring back masks. Hard to believe they can get away with that. But it depends how bad it is, obviously.
Bring them back, yeah.
If it's the strain that combines the worst of Omicron and Delta, is deadly but infectious, they'll have to bring them back. If it's just a more infectious version of Omicron, which is what they think it'll be now, as is going on in Britain, it doesn't seem to be enough. Their cases are like doubling, but
they have almost tripled since February 27th.
Really? Oh.
I'm looking at it
but
now.
There's not a widespread lockdown move in Britain. There was an article in Fox about the 10 mistakes that were made in the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. And
it was actually very convincing and sensible. I was shocked. And I will read you the 10 things that they got wrong in the pandemic and see what you think.
Okay.
I'm getting there. Damn, it's been taken over by the trans swimmer.
Yeah, she is getting some blowback from. I saw a fellow, a swimmer on a competing team. I think you're going to see more of this.
Totally. You're going to be celebrations around the woman who comes in number 2, while everybody ignores the winner. It's going to be like end of Ford. It's going to be like the end of Ford versus Ferrari, where the hero is ignored.
They'll have alternative medal ceremonies.
The woman who came in second was the bronze I think the silver medalist at the Olympics. So she's not exactly chopped liver.
You wouldn't expect the person who came in second to be chopped liver.
Right, but it's like, she's like the best 10 biggest COVID mistakes. She's obviously worth celebrating. 10 biggest COVID mistakes from Dr. Macari. One, surface transmission, worrying about surface transmission. Oops, that wasn't important. No hospital visitation, deny people the ability to see their loved ones. He thinks that was cruel. Closing schools, that's the big one. I think the battle for the public opinion has been completely won, and there are all these statistics coming out showing that closing schools had a huge effect on kids, and especially on minority kids. It exacerbated the differences between the races, and on balance was not a good idea. Do you disagree with that?
The numbers do seem alarming. I mean, the test scores for all students kind of declined during this, but less for whites than for others.
Right. Ignoring natural immunity, downplaying therapeutics, and the therapeutic that turned out to be most ignored was not ivermectin, championed by you, Bob, but
it wasn't championed by me.
Fluvoxamine, championed by me.
Well, championed by Robert Malone too, I think, or championed by one of those guys.
Right. It's the one. It's also an antidepressant. I mean, it does everything.
Right. It's what is that? Is that Prozac or what?
No, I think it's its own thing. Fluvox. Otherwise it would be Prozac.
So that was not Prozac. Just didn't just protect you against long COVID. I thought maybe it just protected you against the the brain fog, but I don't know.
Macari says fluvoxamine, a $10 antidepressant that has been available for years, was found in 2 reputable studies to reduce COVID death up to 91% in the latest study. And no study suggests it is not effective. Yet few doctors are aware of these data because our public health officials have never talked about Fluvox. They focus only on vaccination. And I think they worry if they talk about these remedies that people won't get vaccinated, because they figure I can always get Fluvox.
That's the Robert Malone theory.
Yeah.
It's a conspiracy.
Well, it's not crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, the government has a history of reacting viciously against policy competitors, even if they were good.
So is your sense that right now the pandemic is kind of briefly over and everyone's out? Like, are they wearing masks in Southern California?
I would say 1/5 of the people are wearing masks. There's a lingering minority, but it's definitely a minority. And it's so yes, I think it's
and you're out maskless, like surfing.
Southern California is still a little paranoid compared with back east. Back east is looser, I think. New York has opened up. I hear, I have on good authority, New York has opened up more than California. Let's put it that way. Not spacing out vaccine doses is another one. They've, only lately have they said you could space out the doses, but before they were pedal to the metal, not spacing out the doses. I don't quite understand why. I guess the answer is that neurotic yuppies demanded the second dose, maybe. I don't know. I would have been annoyed if they delayed me.
Well, the official guidance was, are they saying the official guidance on the second dose was wrong?
Yes. If they'd waited more, it would have been more effective.
It wasn't yuppies who did it. That's what they told us to do. We did it.
But if they told me, sorry, Mickey, you have to wait another month to get this while we give the vaccine to the third world, or we give the vaccine to other people, I would have been annoyed if I thought it would help me. And my immunity disappeared pretty damn quickly. So,
you got your antibodies tested?
Yeah.
kind of guy you are.
Before the third one.
Keep careful.
I think that was routine with my doctor. They give you an antibody test.
That's because that's the kind of doctor you associate with. The rest of us, you know.
Yeah. I don't think that's right. I think a lot of people get antibody tests.
Beverly Hills doctors. What I'd give for a Beverly Hills doctor.
Don't go to my GP is not a Beverly Hills doctor. My dermatologist, on the other hand, you don't want to know. Can we say office on Rodeo Drive?
You know what that explains?
Next to the Armani boutique.
You know what that explains, Mickey? It explains
my beautiful skin.
You look marvelous. You look marvelous.
There you go. Cloth masks. I haven't seen him since COVID. Cloth masks. That was another mistake.
Yeah, they died young. I haven't seen. Yeah, they were. You do what you can. I'm sure that prevented a few cases.
I think he says they should have figured out which mask worked before they.
Ideally,
they required them.
It was a whole new thing.
He's also pissed about masking toddlers. Promising no vaccine mandates, then breaking that promise. He also promised that if you get the vax, you don't have to mask. And then we got the mask and we still have the mask. It was Joe Biden who double-crossed us there.
Perfidious.
Downplaying the lab leak. I know that's the one close to your heart.
Oh, there was one lab leak, in the ongoing lab leak dialectic. The latest is, there was this wave of pro-lab leak news, and then there was all of this evidence that the market actually was kind of the epicenter of the outbreak per se, and then the counterclaim was, but maybe somebody came from the lab to the market, right?
That was my conspiracy theory. They were intentionally sent from the lab to the market.
Well, not everybody went that far. I mean, if that's the case, actually, that's the one theory that is insulated from what I'm about to say. The more common thing was, but somebody from the lab happened to go to the market, and so it spread at the market. But somebody pointed out, like, this is a very big city with a lot of places with people in close proximity where you could have gone and turned it into the epicenter of the outbreak. Isn't it a hell of a coincidence that the place the guy happened to go to was the one place where it could have originated? And that's a good point, except unless you have the crazy conspiracy theory that you just blessed us with. Thank you.
Well, it could be an accidental lab leak and somebody went shopping at the nearby market. How is that? That's not so crazy. No.
But you understand what I'm saying? You know how people said, wait a second, what are the chances that the city the outbreak happens to, happen at a seafood market is also the city that has a biolab? What are the chances? Well, this is the exact same kind of logic. Okay, so let me run by it again. What are the chances that of all the places in this huge city where there is enough density of commerce and people that you could start an outbreak, what are the chances that the one place this person happened to go to from the lab is the one place where the thing could actually originate, because you have all this wildlife? Okay, you get it?
Right. I guess that's right. But the chances, it was right across the street. Makes it.
It wasn't right across the street. It wasn't right across.
There are two labs. It's right across the street from one lab and very far away from the other lab.
Are you making that up? You're making that up.
No, I think that's right.
Maybe you think it's right. You think it's right? I think I'm right. I think I'm right. What the hell?
But I thought there's been a pro-lab leak counterattack, because they're discovering that the virus was prevalent way before this market incident. So that sort of throws that it originated in the market sort of into a cocked hat, because they're discovering it in blood samples of people, I assume, who, 2 months earlier were nowhere near the market. So
okay, well, that would be strong evidence
of something.
And you think it's
not strong evidence that came from a lab? It could have come from an animal somewhere else, right?
Right. Well, I don't have a dog in this fight. I remain a confirmed agnostic.
I tend to respect Sir Matt Ridley.
Sir Matt Ridley. I know Sir Matt Ridley better than you do.
Because Sir Matt Ridley was very gracious when your book on evolutionary Psychology came out, competing with his book on evolutionary psychology.
We were both gracious.
He didn't seem to be jealous or hostile.
We were both like that. I've stayed at his place in Newcastle on Tyne.
I didn't realize that.
It's true.
And I forget how did he become Sir? There was some story behind that.
He is, whatever his father, he's the Lord. I mean, his father was in the House of Lords. He is in the House of Lords.
But his father did something, I think, to put him in the House of Lords. Maybe I'm wrong.
Probably got born to somebody in the House of Lords. I mean, they are. Is the term landed gentry? Is that the term in England? What is?
I don't think that's it. I don't think that's it.
Well, let me just say they got a nice place in Northern England, okay? And it looks like the house has been around for several centuries, and it's been in the family the whole time.
Okay. Boosters for young people is another mistake. And that's it. That's 10. But there's nothing crazy. There's nothing insane there.
No.
So it's not even really enough.
Is that on the Fox News site?
Yes, and it's not enough to justify fire Fauci immediately, but it's yet it's 10 possible fuck ups.
You want to hear a headline that was on the Fox News site yesterday, day before? Ready for this?
Sure.
Russian model who trashed Putin on social media found dead in suitcase.
That was on Drudge too. It turns out it was a dispute about money.
It turns out her boyfriend killed her, and everybody knew it. It had nothing to do with Putin, but it's still a good headline.
It is still a good headline.
So, we've been talking well over an hour, Mickey. I know it goes by so fast you don't realize it. So that means at a minimum that we save Hunter Biden for the Parrot Room, I think.
Okay, save Hunter Biden for the Parrot Room. Save Asia hate crimes. I guess
now you got to keep track of yours. I take, you're responsible for remembering to talk about yours.
Okay.
I'm responsible for remembering. You want to know what I'm going to talk about?
But some of the ones I'm talking about are so boring that if I mention them, they would actually discourage people from going to the Parrot Room.
Maybe you shouldn't talk about those.
Civil service reform, Bob?
Oh, Mickey, please.
It's my blood.
Mickey, it'd be a shame if you had to do the Parrot Room alone,
Yeah, I have exciting things to say about civil service. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, what I'm going to talk about is the Michael McFaul Apology of the Week. I think last week, either here or in the Parrot Room, I said to you, every 3 days, the guy has to issue an apology for some tweet. And
I don't think there was one today. Was there one today?
No, it was the one last week. In fact, it happened. It wasn't a tweet. It was something he said on MSNBC. MSNBC tweeted it, and then he got into trouble. It was about Hitler. It was Hitler related. But avoid Hitler. That's just my message to Michael McFaul. Anyway, we'll talk about that. Yeah.
What if Hitler had nuclear weapons? I've been thinking that. I think that would be a way to
he tried.
mention Hitler in a way that would completely get me into trouble. Yet it's actually kind of interesting. How do you negotiate with Hitler if he has nuclear weapons?
I guess
he's gotten them first.
Carefully would be the answer. He might have if he hadn't alienated some of the people who wound up inventing them.
Karma.
And then there's the question of Heisenberg. Was Heisenberg? The Heisenberg defenders claim that he intentionally sabotaged the German version of the project, I think. Others aren't so sure. Anyway, so our commenters want us to continue to talk about the Natalie Wood death theory and the O.J. Simpson thing. I saw a little of this Oliver Stone documentary called Ukraine on Fire. Is that it? Or Ukraine Burning, Ukraine on Fire? I'm going to talk a little bit about that.
Right?
It's on YouTube. I think it was banned from Amazon or something.
It's too pro-Russian?
It is pro-Russian. It's just the Russian side of the story. I have a little to say about that.
But this thing with a point I forgot to make, with Zelenskyy putting his opponent under house arrest, that apparently supposedly is right when Putin started the buildup. in reaction to that. I mean, he was Putin's guy, and he was spewing propaganda, and he shut it down, and that's what provoked. That may have been the straw that broke the camel's back.
I hadn't heard that theory.
Anyway, go ahead.
I may vent a little in a preliminary way about Timothy Snyder. You know who he is, right?
Yeah, everybody respects him, and he seems sort of extreme.
I just listened to most of the Ezra Klein podcast with him. I'll listen to the rest, but yeah,
like everything is fascism. It's all the same.
Well, this wasn't so much about fascism. It was about Putin and Ukraine, and he just seems completely unreliable as an analyst. So I'll vent slightly and ask you whether I should write a whole piece about him, I guess.
Okay, I'll give you know what my answer is, but
your answer is always yes. That's why.
Had anything better to write about?
You don't think
yes.
it's interesting?
No, I think you should definitely write it. I think it's very interesting, and it'll be controversial, and it'll get you in a shitload of trouble. That's
what we seek in life.
That's what I want. We have the result of the poll of who will lose their job first: Jeffrey Toobin, Jeffrey Goldberg, or Vladimir Putin.
Oh, I failed to. I didn't see the tweet, so I didn't retweet it. You did the poll on Twitter?
I did the poll.
Oh, that's a great Parrot Room tease.
We have
Folks,
a winner.
There's only one place you can find out the results. That's patreon.com/Parrot Room.
I'm sure you listened to the Steve Earle songs I sent you.
It's on my list.
We have an hour and a half, Bob.
Yeah.
And we have my favorite piece of writing every week. I take the highlights of that. I'm not going to tell you what my favorite piece of writing every week is, Bob, because that would destroy the suspense.
Wait a second. Is this something from the John Ellis newsletter?
No, it's not even from the John
Ellis
newsletter.
That's a departure.
I've mentioned this before. It isn't such a departure.
Okay. And I don't know what else. Maybe I'll think of something from this Putin bio I'm reading to mention.
There's an academic controversy on. There are all these studies that shows that preschool sucks basically, and actually makes outcomes worse for children who are enrolled in preschool. Worth considering when the Democrats are trying to spend billions of dollars.
That's actually interesting.
Trillions on preschool.
That's actually interesting. I would rank that.
Hard to figure out why that would be, but there is a theory. There's a theory that seems semi-plausible.
I would like to discuss this before we discuss civil service reform.
Okay.
So
anyway, you wanted 5. That's 5.
Yeah, that was about 5 from me, I think. Right?
Is Judge Jackson soft on pedophilia? But I don't have strong opinions on that.
Oh, I think we should do our best to get to the bottom of that. And so you said you are going to talk about Hunter Biden. So this is good. This is good. It's good Parrot Room we got coming up. So I guess that's it. Do we have the actual parrot?
We have the parrot. But one of our viewers suggested that I should figure out how to mute myself while I talk and then open it up for when the parrot talks. So it looks like the parrot is just saying things.
Oh, that would be a cool effect.
That would be very cool.
You talk about your deep fakes. Oh, that was amazing. Oh my God. It's so lifelike. I tell you, you make Edgar Bergen look like Mickey Mouse. You talk about your references that nobody listening to this will get. Was that his name, Edgar Bergen? You're muted, Mickey. Nobody can hear you. I didn't hear what the bird said. Maybe you should just tell us. You're muted. You're muted, Mickey. No, you're still muted, and now the bird is talking. You got to unmute when the bird talks, Mickey. This is really complicated. Okay? I just realized something about this bird. Unless we hear you say it before the bird says it, we have no idea what the bird is saying, because the bird does not do a very good job of enunciating. Okay, this is it's an interesting phenomenon. Oh, I know what else I'm going to talk about. My dream. I had a dream. You're not reacting, but that my dream. Write down dream. Okay.
Great.
It's not that interesting. But it's my dream, and so it's special to me. Okay. Do I have to justify every dream I talk about? No. Okay. So we're heading off into the sunset.
My dream, and I'll talk about it if I want to. Okay.
If I want to. Yeah. It's my parrot room, my dream, and we'll talk about it there. Okay.
See you there.